So the Minerals Council South Africa is calling for the Transnet board to relieve CEO Portia Derby of her duties. Now, the council says Derby should be removed because Transnet is declining and management is failing. Now, South African Youth Economic Council's Bonga Makhanya claims Derby is the right person to lead Transnet, and she should be afforded the necessary time. Makhanya says Transnet plays a crucial role in job creation and skills development. He joins me now to discuss this further. Thank you so much, Bonga, for joining me today. Now, I've had several conversations about Portia and, should she stay, should she go? And there's been so many debates around this, but it seems like the Mineral Council they are sure that they want her head to roll, but not just them. The DA now also posted on their website a few weeks ago that they also want her to go. It seems like her head needs to be on the chopping block for them. Why do you think this is?
So thanks for having us, Baron, and greetings to all your listeners, greetings to all South Africans tuned in. I think fundamentally one of the challenges not only Portia faces in Transnet is that the issue of transformation. The Minerals Council SA and the mining sector at large remains a largely untransformed industry. And part of that is maybe some of the reasons why, when black executives are at the helm of strategic entities, there's sometimes an element of them being undermined, and there's sometimes an element of them being used as a scapegoat for some of the systemic challenges that already exist at Transnet. So I think particularly if you look at Portia Derby's latest comments at the Joburg Indaba, which was a coming together of industry, which is predominantly white males, and coming in there and saying, in their next port allocation, Transnet is going to prioritize junior and emerging miners for manganese, and that 30% of the port allocation will be for black junior emerging miners. Larger the room was saying Transnet's fundamental role is not to necessarily empower anyone. Your role is to transport our goods. So she upset quite a lot of people in that room, and probably that's when the call started intensifying a bit more in terms of her head being on the chopping block. Now her competency is being called into question. Yet, if you were to look at her track record and her CV, you'd find she's probably one of the best black executives South Africa has to offer in terms of experience and in terms of qualifications. So there's a culture of and an environment of always undermining and scapegoating black executives who are at the helm of strategic entities that are facing structural challenges and not necessarily speak to their performance specifically.
Now, it seems like it's also not a big ask for is it 25 to 30% of the port allocation that she wants for emerging miners to be awarded. So that to me doesn't seem like a tall ask, but yet you get resistance.
Definitely. I think anything that seeks to transform and provide inclusion into industries that have predominantly been monopolized will always face that type of resistance. If you attend the mining Indaba, which is coming up now in Feb, if you attend even the Joburg Indaba, you find especially as a young black person, you're the only person of color in the room. So it remains a largely untransformed industry. Even now, as we head to Cape Town for the mining Indaba, you'll find it's a lot of international foreign white males in the room. So once you start speaking the language of empowerment, black economic empowerment, it's always going to be associated with maybe corruption, maybe patronage and incompetency, which has always been a false narrative that we kind of have to dispel, that any form of empowerment and transformation comes with some sort of nepotism or patronage machine, which is probably at the basis the narrative that's being perpetuated.
Let's talk about, I have to play devil's advocate here as well by, the statement that the Minerals Council, they said, she is just another cadre deployment, and they are going in by saying that, she hasn't made any profit, she is a weak leader, and the list goes on. Surely, they feel like they have some ground that they're standing on as well to obviously say these things out loudly.
No, they have no ground whatsoever to stand on. For one, for example, they wouldn't say Andre de Ruyter is a cadre deployment. He's a CEO, white male, head of Eskom. Why is he not referred to as cadre deployment? When it's a young, black, experienced and qualified, professional, all of a sudden you want to say it's some sort of cadre deployment or some sort of link to patronage. Portia Derby probably oversees an entity, and she comes from an experienced background in terms of having served as a Director General of the Public Enterprises previously. She holds a master's, an MBA from Wits University. So she's not just some, fly-by-night type of professional who has now been mushroomed to the top, but she's a seasoned and experienced and qualified black professional who is probably one of the best that the country has to offer. I think if you look at maybe the challenges that Transet faces, just in the last financial year, they declared a profit of 5 billion rand. And the latest financial statements of Transnet. So you can see that the tide is slowly turning. So the idea that Transnet is in some sort of free fall is completely false. The idea that she came in and, for example, bloated their debt bill is also false. In 2020, when she comes in, the debt bill of Transnet was sitting at 127 billion rand. As the latest financial statements, it's at 128 billion rand.
And is this a debt that she inherited?
It's debt that she inherited. So in 2020, when she's appointed and she gets into office, she finds debts of 127 billion rand. And she's managed to stabilize the debt levels. And you can see that the entity is heading in the right direction. Like I said, with the announcement of 5 billion rand profits in the last financial year, you can see that the tide is slowly turning. But it's historical challenges, it's systemic challenges, which generally, I think there's even a saying that it's easier to break a glass than to kind of fix it.
But does she have a clear and structured plan to eradicate those problems?
Yeah, I think, many of the problems that face Transnet, fundamentally, it's linked to our socio-economic challenges, theft and vandalism of the infrastructure, the cables, and so on and so forth. So I think now with working together with probably your SAPS, and even I'm saying they should work together with the SSA, because the threat to our infrastructure of Transnet is a direct threat to economic performance of the country. So they should work with law enforcement agencies, work with all of our security institutions in our country to ensure that we reduce the amount of theft and vandalism on our infrastructure so that Transnet can perform optimally. So the fundamental challenges facing Transnet are not necessarily linked to Transnet's core competency, because Transnet is not a security company. Their function is not to guard the rails or the trains that they've built, and so on and so forth.
So we'd say more needs to be done from government side as well to make sure that these SOEs are protected, not just Transnet, but Eskom, for example, as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So definitely, I think also another element is to look at what other social partners can bring to the table. I think Minerals Council SA, instead of trying to scapegoat a qualified black professional, they should actually look at how can we pour resources into improving the security infrastructure of Transnet and make sure that they don't have to declare force majeure because of theft and vandalism of the infrastructure. But let's get the private sector on board. Let's see them playing more of a meaningful role. The mining sector has recorded record profits in the past year as a result of growing commodity prices. Yes, they failed to optimize because of the issues of Transnet, but they've made more money than they've ever made before, just in the last few years. So they should be deploying some of those resources back into saying, how can we as social partners in the industry come together to kind of end some of the challenges?
But you mentioned that security is a huge problem. But surely that can't be the only reason, for the slow decline of Transnet's functionality.
Yep.
I have to. This is the last question I have to ask you as well, so you can just wrap it up with that. And you can also add in. There's been many media articles as well about the possible or close to liquidation of Transnet as well. So maybe you can bring that in there as well.
No, I think the idea that Transnet is on a free fall or it might get liquidated is completely sort of like false. I think it's scaremongering tactics. I think yes, they've always had historical challenges of debt, but I'm sure working together with probably even National Treasury, they can resolve some of those challenges and ensure that they pay off wherever that they need to pay off in the required time frame. I know right now in Feb, they probably have a 1 billion rand payment that they need to make in terms of some of their short-term debt. And I don't see our Treasury, saying, well, because you guys have had this historical challenge, we're going to throw Transet under the bus. So I think Treasury must also play a role in alleviating some of the debt challenges that our SOEs have in general, not just Transnet. And I think the fear-mongering and the scare tactics shouldn't be at play right now. Now it's for all social partners to hold hands and make Transnet work. It's a critical institution. It needs it to work for South Africa's economic recovery plan. And we hope that the mining sector will really support Transnet's efforts in ensuring that the infrastructure is protected and that Transnet is back to its optimal best.
Are you expecting a lot of resistance from, for instance, the Minerals Council going forward to get Portia Derby removed?
They're definitely probably going to agitate for someone that is more aligned to, not necessarily transforming the industry, keeping the status quo. But I don't see, if we have the right political leadership at the top, I think they should also, the Minister of Public Enterprises, the Minister of Finance, even the President himself, should really protect some of our CEOs and protect them and provide that political support, ensuring that, we recover most of the lost ground.
Thank you so much, Bonga Makhanya, of course, joining us here. He's from the South African Youth Economic Council, just giving us his sentiments there of course, Portia Derby, the CEO of Transnet.